Alright everyone, Beijingbiden is literally begging people not to show up for his Asterisk inauguration, and there's so much to be said about this, because the pathetic cowardice, number one, and the disingenuous plausible deniability shtick of it, number two, make this top-notch. This is the greatest thing ever. Just think of the optics of an incoming Hong Kong president, Asterisk president, who's telling people not to even fucking bother to watch him march down Pennsylvania Avenue. By the way, I doubt he'll be walking. He'd probably suffer an aneurysm. First and foremost, though, before we get into this, I am being abused by YouTube, as are all independent content creators that don't shake hands with the CEO. If you are making news or political content of any kind, and that's 3/4 of what I do, you are buried in the algorithms for anyone that's not subscribed to you, explicitly in search and in related. And keep in mind that Google gives a different experience to each user, so if you see my videos, it doesn't necessarily mean that Jack Spratt over there sees them. Some people do, some people report that they don't. They're also getting randomly unsubscribed from me. This also has happened on Twitter. I've randomly had people muted that I never manually muted, and I'm not exactly sure why, including the DPRK news page. Very good satire, by the way. So if you'd like to share out this video on some other platform to make it more searchable so people know I exist, that's helpful. Or you can follow me on a better video site. There are 4 links in a pinned comment on YouTube. There are also links in the description where I upload my videos. By the way, I also make BitChute exclusives, so one of my 4 videos each day doesn't even appear on YouTube. You're only getting 3/4 of the Styx Hexendom. You're getting fewer clanks. What are you doing with your life? Anyway, Beijingbiden's begging people not to show up to DC. There are several reasons for this. Number one, this is plausible deniability. According to their own estimates, Biden's people are only expecting 2,000 or so people to show up. Trump, at a minimum, according to just the main rally hosted by, I think it was Moms for Trump or Women for Trump, the minimum they were expecting is 5,000 on the same day. That's terrible optics. To have an incoming regime, Hong Kong, an asterisk presidency, incapable of drawing any conceivable crowd, anything close to what Trump can draw in, even in a slipshod manner. They were talking about how we only had 8,000 people show up in Tulsa that one time. The optics of that are terrible because you've just told people, hey, Biden won the most votes ever, legendary election, nobody likes Trump, orange man bad, we're going to burn him out of history because nobody likes him. You're telling me that this is the official MSM line, that a person with legendarily high in-party enthusiasm, which is Trump, it's higher than Ronald Reagan by several points, with a significant coalition of non-Republicans, including myself. Never been a Republican, not a conservative, never will be. I'm libertarian or classically liberal or however you'd call it. I'm not a member of the GOP, never have been. In fact, Trump is the first time I voted for the actual Republican nominee. I had written in Ron Paul before, and then before that I voted for Obama, actually. You're expecting me to believe that a person with those metrics who can draw in 10,000 people fairly effortlessly at a large venue with a few days' notice loses against a person who can't even get 3,000 or 4,000 people to show up for his inauguration. The optics of this are especially terrible because one of the biggest lines, in fact, one of the biggest meme images the left was using, or Dem partisans, I should say, after the last election was, oh, look, here's Obama's crowd in 2012 or 2008 or whatever, and here's Donald Trump's crowd. Oh, ha, ha, it's a lot smaller. Well, 2,000 people is a lot smaller than 50, 60,000 people by a considerable amount. Trump's going to end up there at a minimum. Just at the main rally, there'd be 2.5 times as many people as the maximum that Joe Biden is figuring would show up for his inauguration. I find it even funnier because one of the things you've heard, and you probably, especially on Twitter, this is said, liberals were gloating about the election and saying, well, Donald Trump, evil Blomfler, he has to watch the inauguration stands being built on Pennsylvania Avenue from his White House window. Ha, ha, ha. And they were laughing about it. They're taking him down now. Biden's not going to have the stands up. He's telling people he wants to have a virtual inauguration parade. So, by the way, what do you mean by virtual? Does it mean like a little video game? A little electronic thing? And by the way, because they're so poor at video editing, is it going to be as cringy as like the Democratic National Convention there with their, early 90s looking CGI music videos and shit? Is it going to be like that cringe fest? Because that would be a real shebang. That's a real way to start your asterisk presidency. It'll be a symbol of the dysfunction that is Joe Biden and everyone who backs him. It'll be a symbol of the return to Washington, D.C. as normal. Dysfunctional, outdated, wrong. That's what it'll be a symbol of. I think he's also worried just about the, I mean, conceive of it this way. If you don't have the virtual inauguration, and the MSM can focus on that. It's still boring, but they'll report on it because they'll go, oh, look, this is the first time we had a virtual inauguration parade. Look, it's him marching through Alaska. Now it's him marching through Hawaii. Oh, look, there's palm trees and stuff. And they can pretend that that's meaningful and that anyone gives a fucking goddamn shit about it. While really the real story will be that Trump is in D.C. with, I don't know, a minimum of 5,000 people at his main event. It'll probably be a lot higher. If you look at, I guess, ticket sales to D.C. are sold out all over the place. The D.C. Political establishment reacting by trying to ban guns citywide, which is unconstitutional, but they're making various unlawful attempts. They're battening down the hatches. They're doing what they did before, where they like boarded things up because they thought the Trump fans were going to burn D.C. to the ground, and then there was no violence, and it was really funny. Meanwhile, in Portland, it's mostly peaceful, while fiery rallies that Antifa holds. It's mostly peaceful protests. Just ignore the pile of bodies and the burning Wendy's and shit like that. The fact is that Beijingbiden can't win unless he's absent, because he's not popular. When The Hill puts out a push poll says his popularity is higher than Trump's ever was at its height, he's got 56% approval. No, he doesn't. That is a push poll. That number is a lie. You've either missampled willfully or you've just decided to put out literally phony numbers. Joe Biden's approval is probably not 56% in the Democratic Party, let alone with the entire population. To be clear, the last election, honk honk, was totally fair and above board. Joe Biden's a really popular guy. Why can't he get people to show up to the point where he has to cancel inauguration? Oh, I know why. It's because he's not popular. Because it's an illusion. Because it's a pile of steaming fucking horseshit. I love how they try to claim that it's about COVID. Well, Trump's fans are just stupid, and so they're willing to show up and get sick. Biden's fans are intelligent, and therefore they know to stay home. That's bullshit. Because Biden was already having trouble pulling in considerable crowds before the pandemic response began. Back in February, Nancy Pelosi was telling people, go party in Chinatown. Trump's just being a bigot against Chinese people. Beijingbiden, when travel restrictions to and from China were announced, what did he say? He called Trump a xenophobe. He said this is xenophobic. He hates Chinese people. Somehow he never iterated why this wasn't the case for his European travel restrictions. I guess Beijingbiden was flummoxed by that one. But he called it xenophobic. He was out there campaigning. And you'll remember how funny it was. It was fodder for a million jokes because every time he'd go out, and this is why he stopped, it wasn't because of coronavirus, it was because he fucking failed. The optics were terrible. He'd have 50 people show up. He'd start a fight with one of them. He'd struggle to fill a small town hall with capacity of 500 people or something like that. He'd struggle to fill a small theater. He'd struggle to fill a small, like a small part of a baseball field. He'd hold rallies that supposedly he's this popular dude and everyone hates Orange Man and they're all steeled and ready to fight and they're rallying behind old Joe there. That they never show up. It's not because of COVID. They were already not showing up before that for months. He was already coronated. He was already going to be the nominee. He didn't have to wait. People saw the writing on the wall. He was the front-running candidate the whole fucking time, and yet people didn't show up to see him. Even after it became clear on Super Tuesday that was going to happen, for some time there, he was still holding in-person rallies and meetings, and nobody showed up. Why? You can look at the Zoom call that was leaked with the so-called civil rights leaders some time ago. One of his first major meetings after the election. He fucking fails. He started getting into a fight with these civil rights leaders. That would have gone over, by the way, really, really well if it had been reported on by the MSM. They're going to report on it. And this is just plausible deniability. What this establishes is that Joe Biden is saying, well, nobody's going to show up to watch me because nobody fucking gives a shit about me. I have probably the lowest in-party approval of any modern Democrat. And honk honk, the election was totally fair. I'm totally earned this asterisk position. Nobody has a problem with me. Everyone loves me and I'm cute and eat ice cream and stupid shit like that. I'm like a warm, comfy sweater brunch. He's looking at that and he says, well, you know, Trump over there will probably have 10, 20,000 people at a minimum showing up across the city. I'll just say that I don't want a physical inauguration. That'll explain why the crowd size is small, because I told people not to show up to watch me. Just watch a video on the internet. A virtual inauguration parade. It's horseshit. It's plausible deniability nonsense, and everybody goddamn knows it. Even some of the Democrats know it. And by the way, if you look at who he's picking for his prospective cabinet, and what he is saying, and his website being heavily edited after the election, so the writing's on the wall, dude. The fact that the Dems just chose Nancy Pelosi overwhelmingly, including the fucking squad, the Gang of Four, voting for her to continue as Speaker of the House should tell you what the Democrats are going to do. It's business as normal. They're going to throw money to corporations, give you some welfare crumbs, incrementally destroy liberty like they did, you know, every other time they've been in office since the 1970s, in the post-JFK era, and they're going to keep doing it. They're not going to help the poor. They're not going to avoid war. One of the first things President Kamala Harris would do is bomb another country just to show that she's a big boy. I guarantee that that's the case. They're openly fomenting, in some cases, throwing Joe Biden aside and getting our first female president, an appointed rather than elected official. How wonderful that would be. Be just as legitimate as Beijingbiden. Honk honk. That's about all. Peace out.